met, and a favorable exercise of discretion is warranted. So what does it mean here in Tijuana? Well, most immigrants get their information word of mouth. Yes, they're going to listen to these activists who are helping them, and only 5,000 people claimed asylum. Last year, it was 97,000. I can tell you already apprehensions in the Rio Grande Valley have doubled this year, so it has remained unabated. No matter what the administration is attempting to do, seems to not have affected the flow. Sandra?
William Lajeunesse reporting from Tijuana for us this morning. Thank you.
There to Washington, Ivanka Trump's attorney responding to this Washington Post report that she used a personal email account for government business about a year ago. That paper cites people familiar with a review of her correspondence, saying the practice may have violated federal records rules. Spokesperson for Ivanka Trump's lawyer calls the report misinformation being peddled. White House Chief Correspondent John Roberts live on the North Lawn with more from there. John, let's run it down. Good morning.
Bill, good morning to you as well. First of all, Ivanka Trump does acknowledge that for a time during the early part of her tenure here at the White House, she did use a personal email address, not server, personal email address to conduct some White House business. You'll remember during the 2016 election campaign, President Trump made Hillary Clinton's use of private email on a private server a central argument in that election campaign. However, Ivanka Trump's legal counsel, Abby Lowell, insists her use of private email is night and day compared to Clinton. Spokesman Peter Mirajanian saying, quote, she did not create a private server in her house or office. There was never classified information transmitted. The account was never transferred or housed at Trump Organization. No emails were ever deleted, and the emails have been retained in the official account in conformity with records preservation laws and rules. Ivanka Trump's representatives also say her use of personal email was benign. Again, Mirajanian saying, quote, Ms. Trump sometimes used her private account, almost always for logistics and scheduling at least, concerning her family. Ivanka Trump was apparently unaware of the rules governing private email use when she first came to the White House some 14 months ago when an issue was raised about Jared Kushner's use of a private email address, and it was their joint account. She reviewed her use of a private email with the White House counsel and also explained it to leaders of Congress. But no question, Bill, this is going to give Democrats yet another issue to take on when they take over the House in January.
Well, so another story here. The White House will not seek to revoke CNN reporter Jim Acosta's press pass, but they are changing the rules a bit for the next press conference. What's that all about, John?
They are. And just a quick recap. Remember, after a press conference here on November 7th where Jim Acosta got into it with the president, the White House pulled what's called his hard pass. It looks just like this and allows you to get into the White House complex simply by swiping it. That was ordered restored by a court last Friday. The White House then sent Acosta a letter saying, well, listen, we really want to revoke your pass, so you give us a reason why we shouldn't, and we'll give you a decision on Monday. So yesterday at 3 o'clock, the White House said that they were going to fully reinstate Jim Acosta's press pass, but that they were also going to put out new rules of conduct for the press, which includes, quote, ask a single question at a press conference and then yield the floor. A follow-up question or questions may be permitted, and where a follow-up has been allowed and asked, the questioner will then yield the floor. Yielding the floor includes, when applicable, physically surrendering the microphone to White House staff for use by the next questioner. Violation could result in suspension or revocation of your hard pass. The White House got dinged by federal Judge Kelly last Friday for not giving Acosta due process. So the White House now believes it has given everyone fair warning. Be respectful or you'll be out. Bill?
Thank you, John. John Roberts from the North Lawn. Sandra.
For more on this, on the new rules for press conferences, Fox News politics editor Chris Starwalt joins us now. Chris, good morning to you. And
howdy,
happy
ma'am.
holiday week to you.
Yay.
So are these new rules, are they going to work?
Well, look, you've heard it said before that you cannot legislate morality. Neither can you legislate decorum. The opportunity is clear here for reporters who want to grandstand and make a show of it, and maybe they'll get what Jim Acosta got. Maybe they'll get to be on the front page for a week. Maybe they'll get all of this attention. So if you want to act out and you want to do this stuff, these rules actually, for people who have the wrong idea, these rules actually give people a way to violate the rules and get tagged and get in a public fight with the White House.
So are you somehow suggesting that the rules that the White House is implementing here could backfire and cause more of these Jim Acosta type moments?
It's possible, but I also think that the White House thinks it benefits from conflicts with Acosta. If you're trying to say that the media is the enemy of the American people, who would you rather be talking about? John Roberts and the 99.9% of White House correspondents who already abided by rules like these, who didn't need to have explicit rules laying out what decorum looks like, what collegiality looks like, what those things are about. They didn't need those rules. These rules won't affect them. But I think the White House is advantaged when they can point to people who act like Jim Acosta did and say, this is what we're talking about when we say that the press is the enemy of the people.
Meanwhile, a lot of talk already since midterm elections are over about 2020. And there are reports that Beto O'Rourke's donors and supporters are prodding him to run for president. Is a Beto O'Rourke 2020 run, is it in the works?
Well, I don't know if it's in the works, but certainly he's going to get a good look. He did not win in Texas, but he did remarkably well for a Democrat running in Texas. And he raised all of that money. And certainly he became the Democratic heartthrob for 2020. You can feel the energy around him. The candidate like this, charismatic, younger, with an inclusive message. This is where Democrats' heads are. He's also quite liberal. And so this could be what Democrats are feeling. And it's so early in the process. And you know the old saying, Republicans fall in line, Democrats fall in love. If you're looking for a candidate who Democrats might swoon for in the same way they swooned for Barack Obama in 2008, O'Rourke has to be on the list. Interesting
you should say that. I'll give your voice a break here while I go to this from Bill Scher in Politico, Chris. And in his piece, he writes how the Beto bubble could burst. He talks about him being the hottest thing on the left since Barack Obama. He writes, he has a gigantic small donor list and oodles of free time, both great resources to fuel a presidential campaign. This is the candidate who can beat Donald Trump with soaring turnout from a multiracial coalition. This is Obama 2.0. The next sentence in that piece is very important, however. He goes on to write, but before O'Rourke announces a presidential run, he should step out of the echo chamber and consider the possibility that the hype does not tell the whole story. He warns that this, too, could expose his weaknesses, Chris.
Well, of course, and whoever gets the Democratic nomination is going to go down before they go back up, right? It always happens. There'll be early hype, then there'll be collapse, and then there'll be the restoration. And look, there's going to be 20 or 25 credible Democrats running for president in 2020. If you ask me today, is it impossible or even improbable that when we get to New Hampshire in 2020, we won't be talking about the Beto O'Rourke comeback? I won't rule that out. I think he's exactly the kind of candidate, much like Obama, much like Bill Clinton before him, that if Democrats really are going to swing, and that's what they do. Republicans are difficult to win over. They're difficult to convince. When Democrats go, they fall hard. And he is certainly the kind of candidate they could fall hard for. But yes, of course, along the way, there will be soul searching and they'll tear him down and then they'll build him back up.
He's certainly seen by some in his party as a rising star. And for his part, he has reportedly told some of his closest associates that all options are on the table, including possibly a presidential run or another campaign for Senate. Chris Stirewalt, thank you. Have a wonderful holiday.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Need a hot tea listening to Stirewalt. Yeah. Checking the Dow. We're coming back, Sandra. That's what I'm telling you right here. Amazon was trading lower by $100 a share. It's now back to even.
It's only 11 a.m.
So what I'm saying, what you're saying is there's a chance. And yes, there is a chance. But a lot of pressure right now. Technology sector getting hammered. A lot of negative news out there. And investors are starting to take this in. We'll see how we do in the coming days with the holiday shopping season upon us.
What I'm saying is it's not over yet.
Correct. Not even noon.
These holidays shortened week, there tends to be light volume and bigger swings in the markets. So something to keep in mind as we watch what is another big sell-off for U.S. stocks.
In the meantime, 12 past, Fox News alert. Another challenge now for crews in the California fire zone, racing against the clock to try and find more victims before the heavy rain move in. Heavy rains, rather, what those rains might trigger coming up here. Sandra?
Plus, a federal judge blocking the asylum ban against migrants entering the U.S. illegally. So what is next in the big legal battle over immigration?
We have to look and we have to say that what this president is doing is extraordinary compared to his.
And the president issuing that proclamation earlier this month, it directed asylum seekers to enter only at one of the more than 24 official border crossings with Mexico. The Obama-era judge who issued the temporary restraining order writing this: whatever the scope of the president's authority, he may not rewrite the immigration laws to impose a condition that Congress has expressly forbidden. Joining us now is Tom Dupree, former Deputy Assistant Attorney General under President George W. Bush. Jonathan Turley joined us earlier on the program and said this.
This judge is on good ground that President Trump is essentially rewriting a critical part of the immigration laws unilaterally. What I find interesting is that many of these groups applauded President Obama when he was doing it. So I think that what is clear, if anything, is hypocrisy has no borders.
Well, that's interesting. That's Jonathan Turley weighing on the immigration debate. Well, let me just tell you what he says. The problem is really going to be when it comes to these Democrats and fighting the acting AG and the appointment of Whitaker. The problem is really going to be whether these senators have standing to bring their case, whether the 3 senators will be deemed by the court to the people who should be heard on this case. Where does this go?
Yeah, and that's a great point, Sandra, because, look, the fact is that you have a lot of cases where people, senators, congressmen have an interest, an institutional interest in something. But the courts will nonetheless say, look, we're not going to hear this dispute because we don't think you have a real dog in this fight. We're not here to resolve political disputes. So that's the first hurdle they have to get over. But at the end of the day, I think that this dispute ultimately is about protecting Bob Mueller. That's why this lawsuit is being brought, because they basically want to be in a position to lay a foundation to say, if Whitaker tries to rein in Mueller, look, he was illegitimately appointed. He should have recused because of what he said about Mueller in the past. So I think everything has to be looked at through the lens of this is an effort to build a wall around the Mueller.
About 26 past the hour now. There are new accusations that Facebook knew more about, that it led on about Russia's campaign to influence in 2016. Social media giant now facing backlash from users and lawmakers. And Peter Ducey has got a lot to cover in this story now. Hey, Peter, good morning.
Good morning, Bill. The only publicly known conclusion from all the congressional investigations into Russian election meddling is that Facebook ads were bought by people in Russia, then disguised as political ads designed to stir the pot in the U.S. And there are several new reports that the executives who claim to have a fix for future elections were playing the blame game in the boardroom and prioritizing PR while vulnerabilities remained. That's something the CEO, Mark Zuckerberg, has tried to address recently.
I've said many times before that we were too slow to spot Russian interference, too slow to understand it, and too slow to get on top of it. And we've certainly stumbled along the way. But to suggest that we weren't interested in knowing the truth, or that we wanted to hide what we knew, or that we tried to prevent investigations is simply untrue.
There is big bipartisan support for new regulations on big tech, but now we are starting to hear about a potential conflict. The New York Times is reporting that Facebook and the Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer might have a relationship that is affecting these things. Their report alleges that Schumer told Senate Intel ranking member Mark Warner to back off Facebook, where Schumer's daughter works and where executives are donors to the Schumer campaign. But a Schumer spokesman sent this over. Senator Schumer has worked aggressively to push Facebook to do more to purge fake accounts and bots used by the right wing and Russians to perpetuate a disinformation campaign to interfere with our elections. Schumer has worried that Facebook would bow to pressure from Republicans who oppose the purging of fake accounts and bots, and has urged Senator Warner and the Senate Intelligence Committee to make this a priority in their ongoing investigation of the company. There has been less reason, though, to worry about Russians or anybody else using Facebook for nefarious purposes this morning, because for a couple hours, Facebook and Instagram were down. Bill.
Thank you, Peter. More to come on that. Peter Ducey in Washington. Thanks.
Fox News alert. We may get an official report on the death of Jamal Khashoggi today.
Here in Butte County, set to resume in 2 weeks on December 3rd. Many who have been in a state of shock since this fire began back on November 8th say some kind of routine will, in fact, be a welcome change and the beginning of a new normal. Sandra.
Claudia Cowan, amazing challenges those communities face. Thank you.
President Trump saying that an official report on the killing of Jamal Khashoggi could come as early as today. This after several published reports saying the CIA has concluded that the Saudi crown prince ordered the killing, and pressure mounts for the president to take a tougher stand against Saudi Arabia. Here's what he said to Chris Wallace on Sunday.
Did MBS lie to you, sir? I don't know. You know, who can really know? But I can say this: he's got many people now that say he had no knowledge.
Do you just live with it because you need him?
Well, will anybody really know? All right, will anybody really know? But he did have certainly people that were reasonably close to him that were probably involved.
Daniel Hoffman, former CIA chief of station and Fox's contributor out of London today. And Daniel, thank you for your time here. What do you think is important about understanding the story at the moment?
Well, the CIA has reportedly concluded with a high level of confidence that Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince, was knowledgeable and responsible for the murder of Khashoggi. An intelligence assessment isn't going to get you to 100% for sure, but a high level of confidence does mean something. I would highlight, however, that King Salman, in a meeting yesterday, reiterated that Mohammed bin Salman was not in the chain of command, and he echoed comments from the Saudi foreign minister, Adel al-Jubeir, also saying that this was essentially a rogue operation for which Mohammed bin Salman was not responsible.
Here
but
is
at
more.
The end of the day, this is over to the president to take the intelligence assessment and make a hard policy decision.
Okay, let's get at the decision in a moment. Back to Fox News Sunday with more on the possibility of sanctions.
You saw we put on very heavy sanctions, massive sanctions on a large group of people from Saudi Arabia. But at the same time, we do have an ally, and I want to stick with an ally that in many ways has been very good.
Indication what?
Well, this is a balancing act for our policy. Saudi Arabia is very important for a bulwark against Iran, for joint operations in counterterrorism sphere. And we're also focusing on the 2030 reforms that Mohammed bin Salman is implementing. So there are serious foreign policy concerns, and if we were to apply Magnitsky-like sanctions to Mohammed bin Salman, we'd risk rupturing the relationship. Remember that the Saudis have talked with the Russians about purchasing military equipment, including the S-400 air defense system.
Okay. You were saying that it's the president's decision, clearly. But you also would encourage him not to rush that decision. Just take us through that, Daniel.
Right. I think in the near term, the president has nominated General Abizaid to be his ambassador to Riyadh. General Abizaid was our commander of CENTCOM from 2003 to 2007. I know him well. He's an extraordinary substantive expert on the Middle East. I would strongly encourage the Congress to confirm General Abizaid before any decision is made so that he can be a part of the discussion, because he's going to own the results. He's going to be setting course for our foreign policy from Riyadh, and we need him to be a part of the process.
Now, last question on this. You've heard some outrage on behalf of Republicans and Democrats on the Hill. What comes of that level of pressure, Daniel?
Well, I think here's one time where we've got bipartisan agreement, as you noted, outrage over the murder of Khashoggi. We're seeing it as well from our European allies, France and Germany, which have halted military sales to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. I think the president can use that to his advantage as he deals with the Saudis and highlight, rightly so, the concern in the Congress about the murder, and maybe use that for some leverage in terms of the Saudis maybe being more transparent, as well as taking measures going forward that might satisfy the Congress.
Interesting stuff. Daniel Hoffman, thank you so much for your analysis on that. We'll see you in that report, and if it comes today. Thank you. Control of health care, but what does Medicare for All actually look like? Dr. Mark Siegel's here, professor of medicine at NYU Langone Medical Center and a Fox News contributor. Nice to see you, Doc.
Good to see you, Bill.
What's the big thing on this?
The big thing is expense. First of all, we're talking about $32 trillion over 10 years to transition, according to the Urban Institute, which some call a liberal think tank. And you've got two forces working on this, Bernie Sanders in the Senate and Congresswoman Jayapal from Seattle in the House. Now, I love Seattle, so I have to be careful what I say here. But this is not only very expensive, but it's taking a wrecking ball to the current health care system, which works for many. Employer-based health care that covers $170 million. Some people say, I don't really want that job, but, you know, I better take it to get my health care covered. That's a big deal, and that's been working since the Eisenhower years. Get rid of that, you got a job killer in place. And again, very, very expensive. Also, one size fits all. Fraser Institute up in Canada pointed out just a year or two ago in a major study that there's a 20-week wait for elective surgeries in Canada, which is a single-payer type system.
So I don't understand what the bill would look like entirely, and we'll see what kind of shape it takes. But I do understand this. Both bills would virtually get rid of private and employer-sponsored health plans?
Absolutely.
That now cover 180 million Americans?
Absolutely. Not only that, it would get rid of traditional Medicare, Medicaid, and Medicare Advantage would go. So the current Medicare system would be replaced by a one-size-fits-all. No copays, no deductibles. Everyone loves an entitlement, Bill. So you got your card, you go and get your health care. But who's going to be providing it? In the doctor's office, we like to say, we don't like big insurers, we don't like big government. So this is replacing one with the other. There's no reason to believe access to health care would improve.
So you mentioned Canada. I guess there'll be comparisons to what's happening in Great Britain. A lot of people in England like that system. A lot of people here in our country don't like the VA. Is that a fair comparison?
I think the VA is a better comparison than Britain, except with Britain, again, rationing care. There'll be rationing care here by the government. The VA is a great example because that's what the VA does. It's single payer, but we've been reporting for a couple of years now. Long waits, can't get in to see a doctor. Procedures not available. Rural areas don't have the health care they need. That's a problem that the VA is trying to address. We're going to see the same thing. Medicare for all is not the same as current Medicare. And as you just pointed out, the employer-based health care system, which is the backbone of our health care system, will be disintegrated. We'll lose choice, Bill. What about choice and competition?
You know, if everything that you've said is so negative toward the possibility of having a program like that, why is there gathering steam or gathering support on the left for it?
Well, because it's political. Politicians like to say there's 30 million not covered. Let's cover them. So they want big, grandiose gestures. You look at Australia, which has Medicare for all, and it works. But guess what? It started with Medicare for all long time ago, many, many years ago, and then private insurance is built on top of it. The backbone of our system is private insurance. It's doctor-patient. And you're talking to a physician who doesn't believe that this will improve quality, choice, or competition.
What does it do to innovation?
Well, that's the biggest problem of all, Bill. You made the biggest point of all, because we have immunotherapies coming out. We have great, exciting treatments now that Medicare is already struggling to figure out how to cover. You might not be able to get the cure of the future for your lymphoma. You might not be able to get the robot that you need for if your leg is amputated. You may not be able to get the artificial intelligence. How are you going to get a one-size-fits-all insurance to cover something that works for you and doesn't work for me? Genetic therapies, you can't do it. It's the wrong way to go. Big insurance, one size fits all, wrong way to go.
We shall see how far it goes. Thank you.
Not going to pass.
Mark Siegel, thank you, Doctor.
Good to see you.
All right. Sandra.
The hunt is on in San Francisco for an arson suspect caught on tape. Surveillance cameras at the Tenderloin Market capturing the man carrying a red and white backpack walking to the back of the store. He opened a package of toilet paper and took something out of his pocket before walking away. Then a fire broke out. The owner, in business for a dozen years, says nothing like this has ever happened in his store, and he doesn't understand why someone would do this. Meanwhile, there's a